Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Invincible, a great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I really appreciate that we got Titan back. I thought that was pretty dope. And I thought it was kind of interesting how the episode kind of bounces back and forth between like Titan, who's kind of an unintentional villain, versus like Invincible, you know, Mark doing his thing as a superhero, just kind of like their day-to-day lives. Obviously, you know, Titan owing Machine had some has to pay off a debt, which I also like. That it's like Jeffrey Donovan, kind of, you know, from Burn Notice is kind of the thing I best know him from. But I also like the robotic effect they put on his voice. I thought it was pretty dope. But just him as the big shot villain or whatever, but also just like, yeah, you just messed up that table and you still owe me like the crap ton for that, and then later on the door, that whole bit. But understanding why Titan's in the situation he is, that, you know, I like that, because this kind of dives into the world of heroes and villains isn't as black and white as Mark kind of understood it as, because he thought like, oh, you're a criminal. He's like, you don't know what a criminal is. Like, yeah, I think I know what the definition of a criminal is, but it's like there are layers behind people's story. He's a villain by the fact is that he had no choice. He got money from Machine Head so that he could take care of his family, his wife, his daughter. So once again, it's that gray area. But for Mark, it's just like, you know, he's doing his superhero thing. It's like, yeah, like, you know, he's taking down some villains. We've seen him, you know, once or twice take down before. I'm surprised he didn't get in trouble the moment that guy was like, I surrender, and then Mark punched him anyway. I felt like when they were rewinding the video, be like, oh my god, he's so dope. I thought that was going to be like a thing of like, oh, the villain was giving up and you kind of hit them anyway. I thought that was where that was going to go. Totally didn't go that direction. But this is where it really heats up about the whole superhero thing, balancing your life, especially because he's not like, oh, he's an adult balancing a life. It's like, no, he's a teenager trying to balance school, a relationship, and being a superhero. And I wonder why it is that when the time comes, he still doesn't tell her who he is. I wonder why. You know, because it's like, you know, Gwen had said at the beginning, if you're really serious about her, then tell her, but only tell her if you're real. But maybe it's because he's also trying to figure things out, like, maybe he figures if he tells her the truth, then maybe things change on some level. Like, I'm just so curious, like, his reasoning why he hasn't told. I mean, I get it. At the same time, it is I mean, they haven't really brought it up in this, but it is the whole thing, the typical thing of, you don't tell people your secret identity, because the moment they know the truth about you, your identity, and you as a superhero, it puts their lives in danger. So there's that. But in this show, they haven't really dived into that being the reason. Like, you know, secret identities being a reason for that. They haven't really dived into that. I guess it's just kind of like, it's understood across most superhero fiction, so I guess it's just kind of understood in this. But I just think that's so interesting, and maybe that speaks volumes in itself that Mark won't tell her. But, you know, like I said, maybe there's layers to why he won't. But obviously, I love the whole thing when Titan reaches out to him, because it's like he needs someone's help to go up against and a machine, and it's like, oh, you're missing a couple letters. He's like, paint's not cheap and your name is long as hell, or something like that. I thought that was kind of pretty dope. But like this villain and hero kind of having to work together, because initially he didn't want, he's like, I'm out here like trying to save the world, so I don't know. But it's like, no, Titan showed him, and like, you're so busy trying to save the world, you forget about the smaller people, that there are people living their lives, that there are people who are being kind of affected on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, you're saving the world, sure, but don't forget about the people on the ground. And that's a lesson like he kind of gets from his mom, because his dad's like, no, you're saving so many lives, like saving these lives are beneath you. But it's like, no, his mom's like, no. Debbie's like, no life is beneath you. Like, every life is important on the big scale and on a small scale. And obviously, that being a big thing for a hero, like, the fact is, but that's the thing, like, when your role model and your dad is telling you, do this, you want to be he said it before, he wants to be just like his dad. So I thought that was just such an interesting thing. And obviously, Debbie's already kind of at odds with, you know, Nolan without him realizing it, because I thought it was a tape last episode, but it seems like Damien left her it was either he left it on purpose or he just forgot it. I'm thinking he left it on purpose, just in case he knew, like, probably knew Nolan's threatened me, so I'm gonna leave this just to kind of, so someone who's already on the same page as me is being suspicious about him. He's more so confirmed, like, oh, you did it. He just doesn't have any proof, but he left that probably knowing that Debbie would find it, because it's like he wants her to be the one to continue to work. And I think that's such an interesting development, making it not just the audience finding out about Nolan first, but also Debbie being super suspicious of him. I think that's such an interesting element, making it that she finds, at least she's got concerns way before Mark does, because he's not picking up on it, because I think she has a little bit more objectivity to it, because like for him it's like, oh, my dad's a hero, like yeah, there might be some missteps here and there, but it's like he can do no wrong, he'd never be suspicious. But for her it's like, to be fair, she's kind of known Nolan a little longer than Mark has. Obviously it's like, yeah, you came into this world like about 17 years ago, I've known him before then, so she can definitely tell, and like, I think she just has really good instincts in general, but she can definitely feel like something's off, and she's trying to figure it out, especially looking through Damien's notebook and trying to understand, because you see like the injuries, the injured, also like you even see at one point of his notes, it almost seemed like at certain points he was like, the blood splatter kind of didn't fit with there being another assailant, but also the big key is the costume. He made sure to get his costume, and that's the question. Why? I guess because if it would have had their DNA on it, if he had, I guess that's why. I guess he also couldn't throw it away, knowing that like Cecil and the others were suspicious of him, so he didn't want to give anyone else any ammunition, so he hid it the place he figured no one would step into in his home, which obviously like Damien busts up in there, like obviously Cecil has been too. So I just thought that was interesting. Maybe there's other reasons why he kept the costume that we haven't really dived into yet. I'm assuming maybe it has something to do with Veltramite blood. We'll kind of get to that later, but nevertheless, at the same time all this is happening, you have like the new Guardians of the Globe. Like obviously they're celebrating, yeah, we kicked some ass, stop that dude from turning people into lizards. But then like Black Samson had to be like, you guys messed up here and here, like you guys aren't acting like a well-oiled machine, we're acting like 6 different individual people. But they kind of didn't care. They're all drinking and stuff like that. And Samson's the one that's calling out Rex, and Rex is being an asshole about it. But also we had that scene with Robot meeting up with the Mawlers, because the other Mawler finally came to, the clone is fully formed. And obviously he's like, I need your help on understanding like human DNA. And obviously he has that sample of Rex's blood. I'm like, once again, I guess, because the fact is he took an interest in Monster Girl, because she said like, yeah, because of me using my powers, now I'm a week younger. So I'm wondering, is it a situation of her blood being able to kind of de-age, like maybe what he has, like that body, like it seems like it's raggedy, but also like, oh, whatever's in that test tube from like the end of last episode. So part of me wonder, is he planning on trying to use her DNA that allows, hoping that gets some of that curse that makes her younger the more she uses her power? Like, is he planning on trying to use that for the body to kind of de-age it to a certain extent? Maybe trying to keep himself at a very certain young age. With, like I said, I'm fairly certain, I could be mistaken, but my theory last episode, and it still reigns as my current theory, is I think he's trying to make himself a human body. Which is kind of interesting that he went through the trouble. I guess he knew the Mawlers. It's like, well, you're out and about. You kind of owe me. He didn't bring it up in the episode, but it's like, yeah, I kind of busted you out of jail, so you kind of owe me. So I guess it's a situation of that's why he did what he did. Kind of a calculated risk of like, yeah, they can be brought into justice at any point in time, but also they're more likely to help me if they have all their equipment together and they're on the outside. If they're on the inside, would have had a bargain and stuff like that, they would have probably flipped him off and said no. So I guess this is justification on like how he gets what he wants in the end. But once again, maybe he doesn't view them as a big of a threat, so that letting them kind of out and about to do their thing isn't as bad as maybe other villains. Who knows? Then you also had that situation with Gwen, which she's kind of having falling out with her parents, because they're like, yeah, basically her dad is like, take Rex back. It's like, wait, what? It's like, forgive him. It's like, and he was even saying like, don't be a, and it's like, wow, you were about to go there. And for Gwen, it's got to hurt. Like, wait, you just want me to be with Rex because it's like, at the very least, they don't like her doing the whole superhero thing. So you can kind of understand that side of things. But it's like, at least get back with Rex, because now you're not only are you kind of out there alone, you're also don't have a team. But for her, it's like, I might not even want to do this superhero thing anymore. And they're like, good. But that's the only reason why they were okay with this to begin with. It's like, oh, well, we think Rex is nice. It's like, no, they probably recognize him as an asshole, but as long as they, like I say, it comes from a place of concern. Granted, her dad went about it the wrong way. He was kind of being an asshole about it, not really kind of understanding her feelings about it. So I love the whole situation. Obviously, like, she controls, like, the molecules and stuff, I think she was kind of saying, and she basically made a door in the wall and kind of flew away. He was like, don't you leave this door here. I thought that was kind of fascinating. I also thought it was interesting too that really quickly circling that to Debbie and Nolan, I thought was interesting where she was like, "I'm the one that taught you." I thought it was like interesting her putting him in his place, but being like, "No, don't act like you run stuff here like like he's the hero and you're the one that's going to teach him everything." It's like, no, I taught you. You came to this world, you knew nothing. I told you about humans. I told you like what's important to us. I understood our society. I'm what made you into the hero that you are, and you're telling me I can't do the same thing for Mark. He's like, I'm sorry, I don't want Mark to make a mistake, and have to learn things the hard way, Obviously, it's a whole conversation about, trusting someone, and obviously Debbie makes that remark of, yeah, sometimes people aren't what you think they are, but after which I love the whole thing of like Mark having to carry him around. I love the whole thing of like, he's like, man, this is embarrassing. It's like, hey, this ain't, a joy for me either, like having to fly him around. But also kind of finding out like, what Titan's all about, like his family and stuff like that, realizing like, they're the reason why he does what he does. And especially later on, because Amber talks about like that specific area, and he's like, whoa, on like on 3rd Street, she's like, yeah, it's like my second home. And he kind of recognizes like, that area, obviously what this whole thing means for Titan. So he kind of agrees, because it was like, that was your daughter, right? Her name's Fiona, and it's like this place is her second home. So it's like for him, it's like, all right, understanding where Titan's coming from, realizing he's not that bad of a guy, they decide, all right, let's get to this. So they go and challenge Machine Head, but he's hired assassins, but they proceed to get their asses whooped. Like, all of these guys together, and in particular, like, it's them all together is bad enough, but that one dude that's like, I guess, he's definitely an alien, being like, I thought there would be more of a challenge on this world. He fucked Mark up, dude. Because we even see it, this particular scene, we see it in the trailer. He fucked Mark up bad, because like nothing's been this one-sided for Mark. Because I think that speaks volumes too, where it's just saying of like, yeah, you got so caught up in your name of being invincible, and the fact is that most of your fights aren't too one-sided like this was. He got his shit rocked, dude. I can't help but say that. I was like, you actually felt like the moment a lot of, like, at least I go back to, and I think it's one of those moments where people kind of have those moments where, like, in Homecoming, when Peter's stuck on a rope, he's like, come on, and, like, in that moment, you see him scared and panic, and you're like, right, he's a teenager. It's one of those moments, seeing, like, him bloodied up like that, you're like, mind you, that's not, like, a grown dude doing it. That's a kid. A kid that's like, getting messed up like that. And it's so sad too, because at the same time, like, obviously he's supposed to be showing up with the date he has with Amber, but obviously it's more so like they're working at that kitchen, to feed people and stuff like that. But Gwen showed up, and obviously she's like, yeah, like I thought Mark would show up, but I guess he's not, because obviously like he's been ducking and diving and missing out on a lot of stuff, not just his schoolwork is falling apart, but also his relationship. I also love that line of like, oh yeah, because you don't need to know where like Mongolia. He's like, right? And she's like, no. Gwen's like, no, I mean, I was joking. You actually do need to know where Mongolia is, because you need to know where you are, like when you're flying around. He's like, right, that kind of makes sense. That is kind of interesting that no one ever talks about that. You got to have some geographical awareness as a superhero, like especially if you're one that can fly around. It's like, yeah, you're not always going to have time to pull out a map like, where the hell am I? I'm here, maybe? So that's just kind of an interesting little detail. I should also talk about this. I thought was so fascinating that his principal Winslow is voiced by Reginald, the actor who plays he was in the first Die Hard movie, but also he played Carl Winslow on Family Matters. So that was like, I was like, Winslow. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I looked and was like, the character model looks exactly like him too. I was like, oh my god. It's also weird too, because he reminds me, I think just when I look at him, he kind of reminds me of my dad. My dad kind of like in the face and stuff like that. They kind of are a little similar. So I guess I never noticed that. It's been a while since I've seen Family Matters, so I was like, man, I never noticed how much he looks like my dad. At least to me, he does. It's just weird. I just thought that was kind of a nice little like cameo thing. I was like, oh, and he's Principal Winslow too. I like that. I don't know. I was like, shut up. I love it. That's so cool. But nevertheless, kind of getting back to like the serious stuff about it, like that was like I said, both of them, Titan and Mark were getting rocked in this fight because Machine Head knew ahead of time what was what, because he had already like downloaded a chip to like give him like see all the different possibilities. Luckily, well, his dad was nearby watching everything go down, and I think this speaks volumes that his dad, rather than interfering, just let things play out. And I think that's really interesting because it's like, wow, at any point in time, he makes it, it's a thing of like, oh, you love your son, but maybe in his mind it's like, this is tough love. I warned you about this and now you got to suffer the consequences for it. But I'm also thinking that maybe he's thinking, maybe this might be like a Saiyan type of situation to Viltrumites, because that's the Saiyan's whole thing. Like when they get beaten, when they come back stronger. Like their bodies kind of adapt to the experience of like, oh, you got your shit rocked? Don't worry, you're going to come back. So maybe Viltrumite's kind of worked in that same vein. So he's like, all right, you're going to get super messed up, son, but you're going to come back stronger than ever. Which begs the question, maybe after his fight with the Guardians of the Globe, who knows how much stronger Omni-Man might be if we're going by those rules. Like I said, I'm just throwing this out there because it could also just be a thing of he wants this to be a lesson for his son, because he also wants to see how far Mark is able to go on his own. But also it might be a situation of he hopes that later on this will motivate Mark to double down, kind of give up too much on that human BS, and give up on that shit, and go full Viltrumite and like embrace who you are. Which we still haven't really dived into that too much of like, are there any downsides for him being half human? Once again, does this have a Dragon Ball Z preference of like, state of like, oh, because he's half human, it allows him to have greater potential? Once again, making a comparison to like Gohan being the first Saiyan to go Super Saiyan 2, that whole thing. So maybe I'm wondering, is it something of that vein, or like, and my also thought was, because he's half human, does that mean he can never be as strong as his dad? I'm curious like how the scales are going to work in that on those particular circumstances. But it seems like he called in an anonymous tip, so it's like, yeah, he didn't want his son to die, but it's like, all right, I don't want to be the one to step in. It's like, you got to prove yourself, so find your way out of this. The Guardians show up and they help, but even they get rocked. Samson gets super messed up. Monster Girl, that was rough. Like I thought she was dead when he smashed those rocks against her head. But then the team, and I thought was really dope, Rex was like, you know what? You really messed up this time. And the rest of the team works together. They take down all the other guys except for the final dude, who's like, I'm going to leave everyone here because there's no point in fighting insects. You guys aren't even worth any bounces. Which is good, because he would have killed them all if he hadn't decided just to up and leave. Like, and you even had like Robot coming over and being like, don't worry, Monster Girl, I'm gonna fix you, it's gonna be okay. Like, obviously the team's actually broken up about it, because like, you know, it's like, hell, like Samson had his arm broken, he was swung around like Darkwing was it in the first episode when Omni-Man was ripping them apart. It's like, this was, and just like Mark breathing like that, Cecil and them being like, damn it, all right, we gotta save the kid, but if we can't, get some of that blood while we can. And later on we kind of find out why, because they're testing his blood. It's like, right, you need to find out what can hurt a Viltrumite, because you need to find out how you can stop Omni-Man when the time comes. But it's also like, yeah, the scientists are like, dude, we tried everything. Nothing kills this blood. Like, they do not die. So that's what makes me think they can get super messed up, but they come back stronger than ever. Like, you know, the probably more apt description would probably reference to make would be Doomsday, because that's Doomsday's whole thing of like, every time he's defeated, he comes back stronger and he adapts to every new circumstance and environment so that he's not affected by it anymore. So he's like the ultimate weapon in that regard. So it makes you wonder, are they, rather than using a Saiyan comparison, are they more like, well, I mean, the Saiyan comparison I think still works, but I think Doomsday might be another example of kind of where that could potentially go. So that's crazy. And obviously everyone's getting the news. Gwen's finding out about what happened to the team and everything, especially the Mark. And it's like, Mark loves you. And it's like telling, you know, Amber, it's like, if he could, he would be here if he could. Because it's like, now she's still in the dark about what's what. So Mark's probably going to be going from school for a while. I'm just probably going to, where's Mark? I haven't heard anything from him. Like, Gwen knows what's what. So she might be the one that ends up telling Amber the truth, just to ease her mind and let her know, like, okay, Mark's actually invincible. He's a superhero, this and that, you know. But also, like, Debbie getting that news. And then you have Nolan, like, you have Nolan just like popping in, almost like, oh, what happened? It's like, he was there when Mark, like, not, obviously he was watching the entire time. So like when Mark was really messed up, at no point in time did he step in. So that's where we're definitely at that level of like, I love you, son, but there's some tough love involved here. Like once again, it seems like he's on a specific timetable because whatever it is he's got planned and whatever this is all about, he needs Mark at a certain point. That's why he keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. That's why he's so tough and so hard, because it's like either he's doing it because he needs Mark at a certain level or because Mark needs to be at a certain level when shit hits the fan. Who knows? It's definitely going to be, once again, I think it's a thing of you're going to need to be super strong for what's to come because you're going to help me basically conquer this planet. I think that's, where we're currently going with that. But, I didn't talk about it either on the Debbie thing. I thought that was such a dope thing where she's like, oh, honey, could you get this, and this? Like picking specific places around the earth and kind of timing it out. Like, okay, take him, I know how fast he can fly. It'll roughly take him this long to get here. So she gave herself a 20-minute time window to search around the house to find the costume. And she finds it at the last minute. And she never gets a chance to really examine it before she has to kind of kick it away and be like, oh, hey, honey, you're back with the food and everything. So shit really hit the fan this episode. And I thought it was so interesting too when we get the twist of like, oh, Titan took advantage of the situation. Like, yeah, he's like, I made a promise to the kid, like, I am going to make this city is going to be better, but obviously I got to make sure certain people are taken care of first, that being his wife and his daughter. So it actually kind of which interesting enough, because obviously he's voiced by Mahershala Ali. It kind of reminded me of spoilers, not really spoilers, because nothing's going to come about it, or at least I don't think so at this point in time. It kind of reminds me of the ending of season 2 of Luke Cage. Kind of a similar thing where it's like, okay, like I'm in this powerful position. It's like, because I'm sure for Titan, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to be the grunt anymore, but now that I'm top dog, I can do a lot of good for this neighborhood. I can do a lot to help a lot of people. So yeah, I kind of used you to get what I want, which is Dad warned against, sure, but what this will turn into, hell, even him being like, sorry to kind of get you into this, but hope you survive, kid, but I got to take care of other people, or take priority. You were a means to an end. It's kind of sad that Mark got used like this. But what was also interesting too, and I think this is kind of, it might be that saying thing too of like, it's like when they get mad, something in their blood spikes. Because we've seen it once before with Mark. Maybe when during the alien invasion, when Omni-Men destroyed that entire civilization of aliens, that might have been an instant for him, maybe going up against the Guardians, that was an instant. But it's like once their blood gets pumping, he was just like, I'm going to kill all of you. He saw nothing but red. And it seemed like it kind of eventually and he was like, who's next? But it's like for a quick moment, he gets a burst. So I don't know, maybe his human side keeps that from fully consuming him. Or maybe he just hasn't gotten to the point where, like, maybe his dad's at the point where he can control it. Like, something in their blood, like, really gets pumping and it sends them into overdrive mode. And maybe it's just too much for Mark's body to handle, but maybe, Nolan can handle it well. We don't know. Like I said, this is the second time it's came up. It came up during the Alien Invasion, what episode was it, 2? I believe, yeah. So that's the only time, and now this is the second time, so it's like there's definitely something up there which I'm like, well, that's so fascinating. So like I said, a lot of really, really interesting things went down. I'm so curious to see where things are going to take us going forward. We've only got 3 episodes left this season, so it's going to be crazy to ultimately see how all of this ends up playing out, but especially where we left off, where all that takes us next episode. I doubt we're going to pick up with Titan, but we're probably going to pick up with Mark's circumstances. Obviously, this is kind of like, Debbie's worst nightmare come true, I'm sure, but Nolan's probably just going to be having to feign like, oh, like, I'm so sad, and like, maybe because he knows about their DNA and their blood or whatever, he's like, it's going to be fine. The kid's going to bounce back. Because it's like, I guess it's like, yeah, they can get jacked up, but they can't die. So I don't know if it's like a immortality thing or what, like, there's so much we don't know, but I'm like, dude, I'm so interested to find out, like, what's going on that front. Like, that's also, like, part of me wonders, like, maybe that's what he also did want. It's like, maybe that blood on his costume, if they had examined the blood, like, maybe it was also, well, yes, because it would have been blood from the other heroes, but maybe something about Nolan's blood potentially being on the costume and everything makes you, well, because I assume, like, the blood that's still there is someone else's blood. I don't think, because I guess Nolan made sure not to leave any of his own blood anywhere, because I guess his blood is only mainly on this costume. Because I was about to say, if that blood stain's there They might be able to, if that ends up being something from Nolan's, but I'm sure it's one of the Guardians. But it'd be interesting if it was a Nolan's blood, because then it can compare like Nolan's blood to like Mark's, to just kind of correlate, to be like, oh. But it almost made it seem like his blood was almost alive at the end, almost like a symbiote type of way. Like I said, maybe I was kind of reading too much into that. It looked, maybe I'm not reading, it was looking like it was moving on its own, so it looked very symbiotic in that regard, like, you know, Venom Carnage type of situation. But like I said, I'm really interested to see where this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.